I never thought I'd find a stranger in my hammock. Like, not someone borrowed it for a minute, but full on, stretched out, snoring, and looking ridiculously comfortable. And the kicker? When I woke him up, he didn't even say sorry, just blinked at me like I was the one who invaded his nap. Yeah, that was the start of a day I wasn't prepared for. So here's how it went down. I live in this tiny apartment with a patch of backyard that's basically my sanctuary. It's nothing fancy, just a couple of potted plants, a grill I barely use, and my favorite hammock, which hangs between two stubbornly crooked trees. It's kind of my escape after long days working from home, where I can pretend I'm somewhere tropical and not just a few blocks from the city noise. Last Saturday, I got home later than usual after grabbing coffee with a friend downtown. It was one of those perfect spring evenings where the air smells like fresh grass and a hint of barbecue from somewhere nearby. I had my laptop bag slung over my shoulder and was already craving that moment of laying back in the hammock, listening to music and zoning out for a bit. But when I stepped into the backyard, there he was. This guy, mid-20s, casual clothes, messy dark hair, sprawled out like the hammock belonged to him. His mouth was slightly open, and I could hear the faintest rhythm of snoring. Honestly, I was so thrown off, I just stood there for a solid 10 seconds, trying to process what the hell was happening. Who just crashes in someone else's hammock without a word? Finally, I cleared my throat. He jolted awake, eyes wide and confused. Instead of looking embarrassed or apologetic, he just smirked and said, "Hey, this is a nice spot," like I was interrupting his private chill session. That's when I realized I didn't even know his name. I'm usually one of those guys who'd get mad or at least demand some explanation. But something about the way he looked at me, half amused, half relaxed, made me pause. It was like he wasn't just some random trespasser, but maybe someone I was supposed to meet, even if I didn't know it yet. I asked, "Do you live around here?" And he stretched, sitting up slowly. "Nah, just wandering. Thought I'd crash here for a bit. Hope you don't mind." I couldn't help but laugh. "You're lucky I'm in a good mood." He grinned wider, that same easy energy that made me want to know more about him instead of kicking him out. "Well, I owe you a nap invasion apology later. For now, can I at least buy you a drink? As a peace offering." And just like that, my quiet Saturday night was about to get a whole lot more interesting. I hesitated for a moment, still half in disbelief that this guy just made himself at home in my backyard. But honestly, I didn't want to be the grump who chased off what felt like a random spark of something different. So I nodded. "All right, one drink, but you're buying." He laughed, that easy laugh that didn't feel forced or fake, and stood up, stretching like a cat waking from an epic nap. "Deal. I'm Leo, by the way." "Mike," I said, feeling a little weirdly official about it, even though we just met. We ended up walking to this little dive bar a couple of blocks away, the kind of place that's dimly lit with old concert posters peeling off the walls and bartenders who know your drink before you order it. Leo immediately made friends with the bartender, who poured us cheap drafts with a grin. As we sat there, the conversation started slow. Typical small talk about work, the neighborhood, what brought him to this part of town. But there was something about Leo's voice that pulled me in. He spoke like he was carrying stories he didn't fully want to share yet, but couldn't completely hide either. I found myself leaning in, wanting to hear more, even when the words weren't flowing. "So what's the story? You just wandering around, crashing in random hammocks?" I teased. He smirked, a little sheepishly now. "Something like that. I'm sort of between places. Moving around to figure things out." "Like a free spirit?" I joked, but there was a softness in his eyes that told me this was more complicated. "Maybe a lost one," he admitted. "I left my job, my apartment needed a reset." "It's not as glamorous as it sounds." I nodded, understanding more than I expected. Resetting felt familiar. After my last relationship ended, I'd spent months trying to find myself again. "Been there?" I said. "It's weird how being alone with your thoughts can be both a blessing and a curse." Leo looked down at his beer for a second, then back at me. "Yeah, sometimes it's scary to stop running and just sit with everything." We talked for hours. The kind of conversation that sneaks up on you when you least expect it. One drink turned into 3, and by the time we left the bar, the streets had emptied out and the air had turned cooler. When we got back to my place, I half expected Leo to say thanks and head out. But instead, He just stood there and looked around like he was trying to decide if this was a place he could land. "I'm not usually this forward," he said quietly, "but, thanks for not kicking me out earlier," I grinned. "No problem. You're welcome back anytime, just maybe with a heads up next time." He laughed. Then his expression softened. "I'd like that." We ended up sitting in the backyard, the night quiet except for the hum of the city in the distance. Leo leaned back in the hammock, and this time it felt different. Like it wasn't just my space anymore, but ours. After a while, he turned to me. "You know, I wasn't sure what I was looking for when I showed up in your backyard. But maybe it's this. A little peace, and maybe a little company." I looked at him, feeling something shift in my chest that I hadn't felt in a while. "Yeah, me too." That night, we didn't have grand declarations or plans. Just two guys sitting under the stars, discovering that sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them. I still remember how his hand found mine. Tentative, but sure, like a question and an answer all at once. And just like that, my hammock wasn't just mine anymore. From that night on, things between me and Leo felt like they were unfolding on their own timeline. Slow at times, but somehow steady. We started hanging out more, sometimes just crashing in the backyard, other times wandering through the city like two aimless kids trying to figure out what comes next. It was easy with him, no pressure, no expectations, just a kind of quiet companionship that felt rare. A few days after that first night, I invited him over for dinner. I'm not the best cook, but I wanted to do something that felt a little more intentional. I remember standing in my kitchen, trying to make pasta without burning the sauce, while Leo sat at the counter, watching me with this amused smile like he was both entertained and impressed, which was generous. "So what's your story, really?" I asked, finally breaking the comfortable silence. He took a deep breath, like he'd been rehearsing the answer in his head. "I guess I've been running from a lot. Family stuff, mostly. I'm from a small town where being me wasn't exactly welcomed, so I left as soon as I could. Got a decent job in the city, but the walls started closing in again. I felt like I was just playing a part." I nodded, feeling the weight behind his words. I get that. I was in a long-term relationship that ended because I was trying to fit into what someone else wanted. Took me a while to figure out who I was without that. There was a pause. Then he looked up at me, eyes softer than before. "Meeting you, it's been kind of like a reset for me too. Not just the between places kind, but maybe the kind where things start making sense again." I smiled, feeling something warm spread through me. Funny how a stranger in your hammock can turn out to be the best unexpected part of your day. He laughed, then suddenly got serious. "Mike, can I be real? I don't want to mess this up. I'm not always good at stability or saying the right things. But I like this. Us. And I want to see where it goes, if you're up for that." My chest tightened, but I nodded without hesitation. "Yeah, Leo. I want that too." After dinner, we found ourselves back outside, the city lights twinkling around us. Leo leaned against the tree supporting my hammock, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the porch light. "So," he said, "what's the deal with this hammock? Seems like it's got some magic or something." I chuckled. "Honestly, it's just where I go to escape. But now, it feels like a place I want to share." He reached out, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear gently. "Good. Because I'm thinking of making it my favorite spot." Those simple words, the way he looked at me, made everything feel more real. Like this wasn't just a fling or a casual distraction, but the start of something that could actually last. In the weeks that followed, we fell into a rhythm. Sometimes we'd spend lazy afternoons tangled up in the hammock. Other times we'd explore new parts of the city or binge watch terrible TV shows just to have an excuse to be close. Leo's easy smile and quiet confidence brought out something in me I hadn't realized was missing. But of course, it wasn't all perfect. There were moments when his past caught up. Calls from family that he ignored. Days when he'd disappear for hours without telling me where he was. Those were the times I worried, the times I wondered if he was ready to really let someone in. One evening, after a day when he seemed distant, I asked him outright, "Leo, what's going on? You've been miles away all day." He looked at me, eyes shadowed, then finally said, "I'm scared, Mike. Scared that if I get too close, I'll end up getting hurt or pushed away again. I don't want to lose this, us, but it's hard to not feel like I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop." I pulled him into a hug, feeling the tension in his body slowly melt. "Hey, no matter what, I'm here. We can take this as slow as you need." That night, he stayed over, and for the first time, I saw him let down his guard completely. We talked until the sun started peeking through the blinds, sharing stories and dreams we'd never said out loud before. Looking back, I think that moment was when I knew we weren't just passing ships in the night. We were building something, messy and imperfect but ours. And honestly, I wouldn't trade finding him in my hammock for anything, because sometimes the best beginnings come wrapped in the most unexpected packages. After that night, things between Leo and me felt like they were on a new level. It was like the walls he'd built up started to crack, and for the first time I could see glimpses of the person behind all the hesitation and fear. But, as with anything real, it wasn't all smooth sailing. The past has a way of sneaking back when you'd least want it to. One afternoon, about 2 weeks later, I was at work when I got a text from Leo. It was simple, just 4 words. "Can we talk tonight?" That's usually code for "something's up," and my stomach twisted a bit. I tried not to overthink it, but my mind was racing through every possible scenario. That evening, when he showed up at my door, his eyes were tired, and he seemed smaller than usual, like the weight of the world was pressing down on him. We sat on the couch, a comfortable silence hanging between us before he finally spoke. "Mike, I need to be honest with you," he said, voice low. "There's a lot I haven't told you. About where I'm from, why I left, and, well, why I've been so scared to let anyone in." I nodded, signaling him to go on. "I wasn't going anywhere." He took a deep breath, then started. "My family, they're conservative, really close-minded about who I am. When I came out to them a few years back, it didn't go well. I was disowned, cut off. That's part of why I left home, why I've been bouncing around, trying to find a new place to belong." His words hit me harder than I expected. I'd known his past was rough, but hearing it laid out so plainly made everything more real. I've been carrying that pain around, and sometimes it makes me push people away before they can push me. "I'm sorry if I've ever made you feel like I wasn't all in." I reached out, squeezing his hand. "Leo, thank you for telling me. It means a lot, and I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure this out together." There was a small smile, fragile but genuine, that touched his lips. "I want that. I want us." Over the next few days, we started to talk more openly about what Leo's future might look like. He wasn't ready to face his family just yet, and honestly, I wasn't going to pressure him. But he did want to build a life here, something steady, something real. One weekend, we took a trip to the coast. Just a day drive, nothing fancy, but it felt like a breath of fresh air for both of us. We walked along the beach, shells crunching underfoot, the ocean breeze tangled in our hair. Leo was quieter than usual, but in a good way, like he was soaking everything in without the usual cloud of worry. At one point, he stopped and looked out at the horizon, the setting sun painting the sky in colors I didn't have words for. "Mike," he said softly, "I never thought I'd find someone who makes me feel this safe. Like I'm not just surviving, but maybe even living." I pulled him close, resting my forehead against his. "You're not alone anymore. Not ever." That trip felt like a turning point. When we got back, things settled into a rhythm that was both comforting and exciting. Leo started looking for a place of his own, and I was there every step of the way, helping with apartment viewings, moving boxes, and late-night takeout dinners in his empty living room. But just when it felt like everything was falling into place, life threw us a curveball. One evening, a knock on my door startled me. When I opened it, there stood a man in his early 40s, looking nervous but determined. "Are you Mike?" he asked. I nodded, confused. "I'm Detective Ramirez," he said, pulling out a badge. "May I come in? It's about Leo." My heart thudded in my chest. What's going on? As I let him in, my mind raced. Was Leo in trouble? Was this about his past? I didn't know what to expect, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to face it alone. That night marked the start of a new chapter, one filled with challenges and truths neither of us saw coming. But if there was one thing I'd learned from finding Leo sleeping in my hammock, it was that sometimes the most unexpected moments lead to the most important journeys, and I was ready to take that journey with him. Detective Ramirez stepping into my apartment made everything feel suddenly fragile, like the air itself had shifted. I closed the door behind him, heart pounding in that weird mix of dread and protectiveness. I glanced toward the hallway where Leo's bedroom was just beyond view and wondered where he was, why I hadn't heard him come in. Detective Ramirez looked around the small living room, his gaze sharp but not hostile. I realize this is unexpected, and I appreciate your cooperation. I'm here because of some concerns regarding Leo. It's nothing criminal on your end, but it's important you know what's going on. I crossed my arms, trying to steady my breathing. What kind of concerns? He pulled out a folder and sat down on my couch, opening it to reveal some papers and photos. Leo's been out of contact with law enforcement for a while, but he's recently been linked to a situation involving his previous residence. There's an ongoing investigation into some financial discrepancies, and Leo is considered a key witness. We need to speak with him officially. My stomach dropped. This was news to me. Leo hadn't mentioned anything like this, not even a hint. I felt a surge of worry and confusion. Did he know you were coming? Detective Ramirez shook his head. No. We wanted to approach him through you first, see if you could help us get in touch. The door at the end of the hallway creaked open, and Leo appeared. His face went pale when he saw the detective sitting in my living room. He looked to me, eyes wide, and I could see the weight of fear and uncertainty. Mike, he whispered. I motioned for him to come over, and he hesitated before sitting next to me. The detective turned to him. Leo, I know this is a lot. We're not here to accuse or arrest you, at least not at this time, but we need your cooperation to resolve the matter. Your cooperation could make a significant difference. Leo swallowed hard. I didn't want to drag Mike into this. I thought I could handle it on my own. I squeezed his shoulder gently. You don't have to handle anything alone anymore. There was a long, heavy pause before Leo exhaled sharply. Okay, I'll cooperate. That night, after Detective Ramirez left, the three of us sat around my kitchen table talking. Leo slowly opened up, revealing the truth behind the investigation. It turned out that before he left his old apartment, a roommate he'd trusted had been involved in some shady dealings, using Leo's name without his knowledge. When the financial discrepancies came to light, Leo became a person of interest until he could prove his innocence. I was scared, Leo admitted, voice low, scared that this would follow me, that it'd ruin everything I was trying to build here, with you. I reached across the table and took his hand. Leo, I believe you. And whatever comes next, we'll face it together. He smiled, a little shaky but genuine. Thank you, Mike. You're the best thing that's happened to me in a long time. The next few weeks were a blur of phone calls, meetings with lawyers, and late-night conversations where we tried to keep normal life going in between the chaos. Leo's bravery in facing the situation head-on made me admire him more, but I also saw the toll it took. Nights when he couldn't sleep, moments when his old fears flared up. One night, I found him sitting on the porch steps, staring at the stars as if they held the answers. Hey, I said softly, sitting beside him. You okay? He shrugged, eyes fixed on the sky. I just want this to be over, to feel normal again. I put an arm around his shoulders. Normal's overrated, but we'll make our own normal. One where you're safe, where you're happy. He leaned into me, and for a moment, all the worries faded. Not everything was solved overnight, but having someone by your side who truly sees you, that made all the difference. The hammock in the backyard, once just my escape, became our symbol of resilience, someone finding rest even after the storm. I never thought a stranger sleeping in my hammock would change my life, but here we were, still tangled together in this messy, beautiful story. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. The thing about life is, just when you think you're getting a handle on things, it throws you a curveball you never saw coming. For me and Leo, that curveball came in the form of a weekend trip he had planned to visit a friend in another city. It wasn't anything major, just a couple of days away, but I could tell there was something beneath the surface that made him hesitant to tell me more. I should have told you earlier. He said one evening as we sat on the couch, the glow from the TV casting soft shadows across his face. It's just complicated. I gave him my full attention. Hey, you know I'm here, right? You don't have to keep things bottled up. He looked away for a second, then back at me. It's just that my past isn't done with me yet. The friend I'm visiting, he's someone I trust, but he knows some people I've been trying to leave behind. I want to face it, but I'm scared it might drag me under. I reached for his hand and squeezed it gently. Whatever happens, you won't be facing it alone. I want to be there with you. For a moment, I thought he might say no, but then his eyes softened. I'd like that. So the next day, we packed up and hit the road. Driving out of the city felt like peeling away a layer of tension neither of us had realized we were carrying. The road stretched ahead, the hum of the engine and the changing scenery giving us space to just be without the constant buzz of everyday life. When we arrived, Leo's friend, Jamie, greeted us with a warm, open smile. Tall, with a laid-back vibe, he immediately made me feel welcome. The three of us spent the evening catching up, laughing over old stories, and sharing little details about our lives. I could see Leo relax in a way I hadn't seen in weeks, but the next day was the real test. Jamie took us to meet a few people, folks from Leo's past who had their own version of the story, some of it messy, some of it painful. Leo was visibly tense, but he stood tall, answering questions, addressing misunderstandings, and laying down some hard truths. Watching him face all of that was like seeing someone walk through fire and come out stronger on the other side. At one point, when it seemed like things might spiral out of control, I found myself stepping in. Leo's not that person anymore. He's here, trying to make things right. And he has people who care about him, people who believe in him. There was a beat of silence, then nods of understanding. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it was progress. After everything settled, Leo and I found a quiet spot near a lake, the sun dipping low and painting the sky with pinks and oranges. We sat side by side, the kind of silence between us that felt full and comforting. He turned to me and smiled, a little shy but real. "Thank you for coming with me. I don't think I could have done it alone." I shrugged, trying to play it cool even though my heart felt full. "Well, you kinda stole my hammock, so I guess I owe you." He laughed, leaning into me. "Don't remind me. But seriously, this, us, it means everything." That weekend marked a turning point. When we got back home, things felt different, not because the problems were gone, but because we were facing them as a team. And that made all the difference. Back in the backyard, the hammock took on new meaning. It wasn't just a place to escape anymore. It was a symbol of trust, of shared space and stories, of two people who found something unexpected and refused to let it go. One evening, a few weeks later, we were sprawled out there, the stars just beginning to prick the dark sky. Leo rested his head on my chest, and I could feel the steady beat of his heart. "You ever think about the future?" he asked quietly. I smiled, running a hand through his hair. "I do, and I think it looks a lot better with you in it." He smiled back, eyes closing as if that was all the reassurance he needed. Sometimes, love sneaks in through the most unexpected doors. For me, it was a guy sleeping in my hammock who didn't apologize. And for both of us, that was just the beginning. Things between Leo and me had settled into this quiet rhythm that felt both comfortable and new. But, if I'm being honest, that calm was starting to stir up feelings I wasn't entirely ready to face. You know that moment when you realize you care about someone more than you expected, and suddenly every little interaction holds a weight you can't quite shake off? Yeah, that's where I was. One evening, we were back in the backyard, the hammock swaying gently in the breeze. Leo was lying there, half asleep, the way he always looked after a long day. Peaceful, but with that flicker of something restless beneath the surface. I sat on the grass nearby, watching him, the last light of the sun casting golden hues over his face. "Mike," he said softly, eyes still closed. "Can I ask you something?" I smiled, trying to sound casual, even though my heart was racing. "Anything." He shifted slightly, sitting up, rubbing the back of his neck like he was nervous. "Do you ever think about us? Like, what it means? Where this could go?" I took a breath, trying to steady the jumble of thoughts in my head. "Yeah, I do. More than I expected, honestly." He gave me a half grin, relief washing over his features. "Me too. I guess I'm scared sometimes. Scared that if I say it out loud, it might change everything. Maybe it will change things," I said, but not in a bad way. "I think it's okay to not have all the answers yet. We're figuring it out together." Leo looked at me then, something unguarded in his eyes that made me want to close the distance between us. So I did. Slowly, deliberately, I reached out and took his hand in mine. For a moment, he just held it, and then he tightened his grip, like he was anchoring himself. "Mike, I don't want to lose what we have, but I want more too. I want to be with you, really be with you." My chest tightened, and I nodded. "I want that, Leo. I've been holding back because I didn't want to scare you off, but I'm done pretending I'm not falling for you." He laughed softly, a sound full of relief and something like hope. "Good, because I'm falling too." That night we stayed out in the backyard longer than usual, wrapped up in a quiet kind of happiness. Neither of us said much, but the way our hands were tangled spoke volumes. The days that followed felt charged with new energy, like we were stepping into territory neither of us had dared explore before. We started making plans, small ones at first, like cooking dinner together or taking weekend hikes. But beneath the surface, I could feel the momentum building toward something bigger. One afternoon, we were at a coffee shop, sipping lattes and people watching, when Leo looked over at me with that familiar, mischievous glint. "You know, I never really apologized for crashing your hammock." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm still waiting," he grinned, leaning in close. "Then let me make it up to you. How about I officially take you out on a date? No hammock naps involved." I laughed, feeling my heart warm a little more. "I'd like that." Our first official date was clumsy and perfect. We went to this little jazz club downtown, the kind of place with dim lighting and live music that wraps around you like a hug. Leo was nervous, fiddling with his sleeve, and I was trying to play it cool even though I was buzzing with excitement. We talked about everything and nothing. Music, dreams, the ridiculousness of dating apps. At one point, he reached across the table and brushed a stray hair from my face. The simple gesture made my whole body lean toward him. After that night, things started to feel more real, more solid. We told a few close friends, carefully navigating our way through the new social landscape. There were awkward introductions and a few raised eyebrows, but nothing that shook us. Then, one evening, as we sat curled up on the couch, Leo looked at me and said, "You know, sleeping in your hammock that first day wasn't just about finding a place to rest." I blinked, caught off guard. He smiled, eyes warm and sincere. "It was about finding a place where I could be safe. And I think I found that with you." I pulled him close, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart against mine. "You're safe here, with me." We stayed like that for a while, wrapped up in each other and the quiet promise of what was to come. Life wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, moments of doubt, and the occasional argument, but we faced them together, hand in hand. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way, because sometimes love shows up in the most unexpected places. For me, it was a guy sleeping in my hammock who never apologized and who ended up changing everything. Months passed, and with each day, Leo and I wove our lives more tightly together, slowly, deliberately, like two threads finding their place in a tapestry. The chaos of his past didn't disappear overnight, but it no longer defined him. Instead, it became part of our story, a backdrop to the life we were building. One warm evening, we found ourselves back in the backyard, under a sky full of stars. The hammock swayed gently between the same two trees that had witnessed the very beginning of everything. Leo settled into it, and I sat beside him on the grass, our shoulders brushing. He looked up at the sky, then turned to me with that quiet smile I knew so well. "You know, I never thought I'd find a place or a person where I could just be." I smiled back. "I'm glad you found both." There was a comfortable silence, the kind that feels like home. Then he reached out and took my hand, fingers intertwining with mine naturally. "Thanks for not kicking me out that day. For seeing me, even when I was a stranger in your hammock." I squeezed his hand gently. "You're not a stranger anymore." You're the best part of my life." He chuckled softly, his eyes shining. Funny how something so unexpected, like waking up to find a guy sleeping in your hammock, can change everything. I nodded, feeling the warmth of that truth settle deep inside me. Yeah, life's weird like that. We stayed there for a long time talking about the future, not in grand plans or promises, but in hopes and quiet dreams. No rush, no pressure. Just two people who'd found each other, imperfect and real. As the night grew cooler, Leo leaned his head on my shoulder, and I rested mine against his. In that simple closeness, I felt a peace I hadn't known before. Sometimes, love doesn't come wrapped in fireworks or dramatic gestures. Sometimes, it arrives in a hammock, on a random afternoon, with no apologies needed, just a willingness to take a chance. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change your story forever.